welcome to Bearly Homesteading. This is a new YouTube channel on homesteading, and I am the Lumberjack. Wanted to introduce our family and our property and what we're doing on this channel to all of you out there on the internet. So we are a family of 6 that are up here in the Colorado mountains just outside of Denver, and we are Bearly Homesteading. So as I mentioned, we're a family of 6. We have 4 adopted children ranging in ages from 10 years old to 2 years old, and my wife and I are not originally from Colorado. We moved here about 5 years ago, and we bought 10 acres here in the mountains outside of Denver, and our property is right at 8,000 feet, which has proven to be a challenge in some ways and a blessing in others. And our property, the housing market here in Denver was very expensive, so we were able to buy the property we wanted but not put the house that we wanted on it. Our house is very small, 1,400 square feet of livable space with 6 people is tight, and so we are doing the homesteading to try to supplement our income a little bit and get costs down, so that at some point in the future we can actually do an addition to the house and get a little bit more elbow room. So what are the differences between what we're doing here and what other YouTube homesteading channels are doing? Well, first off, I am fully employed. We aren't doing the homesteading full-time. I have a full-time job, and sometimes a little bit more than full-time. My wife's very busy with our family, and so we're doing this. At best case, it's going to be a side job. Worst case, it's going to be a very expensive hobby that haunts my family for generations financially. Second, as I said, we have a big family. There's 6 of us. We're also foster parents, and so we often have foster children here. And so the homesteading is a way for us to feed our growing family and supplement our income a little bit so that we can meet some of our financial goals. And I'm going to talk about some of our goals a little bit later on. Another big difference between this channel and some of the other channels out there is our location. We are in the mountains of Colorado. As I mentioned, 8,000 feet in altitude, and that presents some interesting challenges when it comes to some of the homesteading activities. For one, we get some really high winds up here. We just had a storm blow through yesterday. Winds were up to 50 miles an hour. We also get very high UV, and so anything that you build up here has got to be ultraviolet resistant. And so the plastics and the PVCs will degrade very quickly, as well as paint, and a lot of the materials the UV will just completely destroy. And so we've had to learn how to take some of the homesteading ideas that are out there and adapt them to our particular environment. The other thing that's different between what we're doing and what some of the other people are doing is that we believe that homesteading is more of a philosophy than a way of life. It has to do with do-it-yourself, DIY, but to an extreme. My wife and I both grew up in families that were not very affluent, and my wife's grandfather actually had a saying that we've kind of adopted as our unofficial motto here at Bearly Homesteading of wear it out, use it up, or use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. And so we have a very strong do-it-yourself heritage, and we are trying to take that knowledge and experience and apply it to the homesteading up here. And so we're not getting a lot of assistance we're getting a lot of information, but we're doing it all ourselves. And so that's been quite a challenge. So as I mentioned, the altitude up here gives us some unique challenges. So here is one of the plastic hoop houses that we built out of PVC, and you can see how the windstorms have just torn this thing apart. And the plastic, we've had this thing up for 2 years, and the plastic's already starting to crumble because of the UV. And so while this particular design works great in other situations, in other climates, up here it's just not working out well for us. So we've had to go to something a little more appropriate for our situation. So here's our new cold frame, just built this year. South facing, we've got the plastic sheeting to let the light in, and then all 2x4 construction, so it should stand up to the winds very well. On the back side, got a metal roof to be able to hold the snow, since the snow on this north side isn't going to melt as fast. And we've got the siding to capture some of the heat and keep it in. So we're going to talk more about the details of this cold frame and some of the other stuff that we're doing up here in the garden later on. Another one of our challenges is our growing season. We've got a very short growing season. So for the 2019 growing season, the season was about 4.5 months long. We got our last snow for the 2018-2019 winter June 1st. And then the first snow of the 2019-2020 winter came about mid-October. And so we've done what we can to help with that, with the raised beds and the cold frames, the hoop houses, and we're going to have to do some more things, like with the solid cold frame, the mini greenhouse, because the season's just too short to get a lot of things to produce up here. Another challenge that we have here on Bearly Homesteading is the wildlife. It's called Bearly Homesteading because there are bears up here, and our garden looks more like a concentration camp than a garden in a lot of ways. We've had to put 8-foot fencing all around it to keep the deer and the elk out. And then this year we're actually going to be covering the entire thing with chicken wire to keep the birds out. We've got a lot of magpies and crows. They come in here and eat the vegetables in the garden, and we can't let our chickens out in this area because of the hawks. And so the wildlife is a challenge, and we've got to get our defenses pretty strong to keep them out of our from eating all our hard work. So along with that do-it-yourself philosophy, one of the things that we're going to be doing on this channel as we do our different segments and talk about their different projects that we've got going on is we want to discuss how pretty much anyone can take what we're doing here and modify it to their particular situation. You know, we believe that since homesteading is a philosophy, you don't necessarily need 10 acres in the mountains of Colorado to do it. You could be in a one-bedroom apartment and take some of the homesteading lessons that we've learned and apply them to your situation. So look for discussions in future videos of how you can take what we're doing here and modify it for other things, you know, other places, other situations. I mentioned that goals that we're trying to accomplish up here. So when we moved to Colorado and we're looking for property, One of the things that my wife and I really wanted to be able to do was to have enough property that we would always have projects going, always have things to do, because we wanted to teach our children a strong work ethic. One of the things that I personally am seeing in society right now is a great deal or an attitude of entitlement. And it's not just limited to a single group or a single age demographic. I see it pretty much everywhere in society. And so I didn't want my children to fall into that. I wanted them to learn how to work and how to work hard. And in conjunction with that, I also wanted my children to learn how to deal with difficulties. 8,000 feet is a challenge. So far this year, it's the middle of January, we've already had 6.5 feet of snow. And last winter, snow total from January 1 until the last snowstorm was 10.5 feet. So we have some difficulties with the weather, and I wanted my children to learn how to deal with difficult situations and to deal with them with a positive attitude and a can-do attitude. Second goal that we wanted to accomplish with this experiment is to be able to produce half of our own food here on site. Basically, we wanted to cut our grocery bill in half. And so we're going to find out this year if we were able to meet that goal. The past couple of years have been experimental years, trying different things, and hopefully this year we'll actually be able to meet that goal and maybe even do better. The third goal that we have and that we're trying to accomplish with this homesteading is, as I mentioned, we've got a very small home and a large family, and so we want to be able to financially be able to afford an addition to our home in the next 2 years. And we're hoping that by these homesteading philosophies, getting our food produced here on site, getting the costs down, being able to run our family, and being able to learn how to do a lot of things ourselves, that we'll be able to afford that. As I mentioned, we're foster parents, and we want to be able to continue to foster needy children here in this area that need a good home, that are struggling. And so being able to get a bigger home is going to help us to be able to continue to foster those children.